Welcome back, everybody. Today's video is going to be a long-awaited BSJ carry hero tier list for the patch that hasn't been changed in 6 months. The cool thing is we've been seeing a lot of recent heroes pop into the meta despite there being virtually no patch changes for such a long time. But I'm today excited to feel confident, at least for now, of what heroes we can slot in to their given tiers so you guys can pick the right heroes for your carry games, with a brief explanation of all the top heroes and what makes them good / what build they're using to be powerful. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and get through the scrub tiers one at a time. So we're gonna go and start with the F tier, and my description of F tier for you guys would be heroes that I've not even seen in my games, maybe more than once or twice in the last month. And if they were in my games, by no means was I impressed. So these are heroes that I would just generally lean away from, not picking in general, but picking in the carry role specifically. So we've got Phantom Lancer, Lone Druid, nobody likes that hero anyways, Necrophos, Sag, I really like Necrophos, Ricky, getting played a lot 4 position right now, haven't seen any Faceless Voids, Clinks I haven't seen in any position, Lena's getting predominantly played mid, Arc Warden off the face of the earth, Legion Commander being played in the offlane some, but I don't know why people are picking her. She feels pretty underwhelming, at least in my bracket. Wind Ranger and Marana, the universal ranged carries with the Gleipnir builds, fell off the face of the earth with the recent patches. And Abaddon and Pudge just kind of belong in the support role. Pudge probably belongs on the bench, but people are still going to pick him in your games. Who are we kidding? So, moving on to D tier. These are heroes that, generally speaking, I wouldn't flame you if you picked them, but they better be like your favorite hero / master tier, because otherwise they just feel super underwhelming in the carry role. So they're specializing heroes. Luna, ever since they removed her level 20 talent, feels kind of meh. Naga Siren, she was getting picked a little bit in competitive Dota. I do think she's very good against Spectre specifically. She always has been because like the song and everything, and having the lanes pushed out so none of your teammates have to show on creep waves. But there just seems to be better heroes, especially like Illusions are more so summons heroes right now, I feel like. Wraith King, he's a Radiance buyer through and through, and we'll get to that later, but there's just better Radiance buyers out there. He kind of plays like the sustain, long fights, durable guy, and there's just 2 heroes that immediately come to mind, 3 actually, that are just way better than him at that role. Sniper, definitely more of a mid laner, sometimes even a support, but mainly a mid laner. Same with Huskar. Juggernaut, you know, he had his like 1 week when Facets came out, and other than that, he's still just been pretty god-awful. Muerta, purely a 4 position. Slardar, we occasionally see in the off lane, but generally pretty bad. Dawnbreaker, pretty strong off laner, not a strong carry. Sven, we always categorize Sven as a stunning carry, similar to CK. We could even arguably like move CK over here just for like keeping the heroes of the same type in the same area. There's just better stunning carries right now, 2 of which we will get to when we get to the top of the tier list. Nature's Prophet, kind of similar to the Marana and Wind Ranger, just these like ranged Gleipnir guys. No longer really pickable. SF got gutted in the last letter patch, and Meepo, we don't need to talk about Meepo. Moving on to C tier. These are heroes that I would say are situationally quite powerful, but in general, I don't want to see them very often. So when I look at Anti-Mage, there's just anti-mage games, you know? Enemy carry picks Medusa, picks Midstorm, something like this. 2, like a Zeus and a Pugna support. It's a good anti-mage game. I think the hero's plenty good enough to be picked in those type of games. TA, I specifically like her a lot against Nyx Assassin 4, as well as potentially Bounty Hunter. Just these like 4 positions that are trying to pick you off, and you can just blink away from them because they have like large burst, especially Nyx. Like I think she's really good against Nyx. That's when I would pick her personally. Drow kind of has to be last pick because there's a lot of like Magnuses and Spectres, heroes that just close the gap on you really easily. A lot of melee 4s, as I'm mentioning. So these ranged squishy carries with no way to defend themselves other than her silence, I guess. She just feels pretty mediocre for that reason. Medusa, out of all the flash farming carries, it just feels like her items have been nerfed too many times. It feels like, even though Manta is still a very good item, it just feels like Medusa's a bit too slow. Razor, yeah, it's like they have a single carry that you need to link, like a DK, perhaps. And that's when he might be worth picking, but I think he'd probably be better in the offlane or mid role, but just an overall C tier hero in every single role, I'd say. Marcy, specifically with Io, that's why she's all the way up here, specifically with Io, guys. If you're picking duos, I encourage you to try Marcy still, but other than that, I would not be picking carry Marcy. Weaver, out of all the ranged carries, he didn't have to buy Gleipnir, and there's kind of like a uprising of Phoenix offlane, and Weaver's quite good against Phoenix offlane, so I would see Weaver against like a bunch of slows being really powerful, but otherwise there's just generally better heroes. Troll Warlord's quite good against the likes of like Lycan offlane and stuff. Any summons heroes that aren't Beastmaster. So if you ever see those, Troll Warlord's always great in those matchups. Moving on to B tier, as we're going to get down a little bit more to the nitty gritty here, talking about what makes the heroes in the B plus tiers so high. Because after you see my tier list, you're going to see a little bit of a, pyramid going here. So first and foremost, in the B tier, we'll start from the back, the lowest of the B tier. We got Terrorblade. I just feel like there's a lot of physical damage offlaners right now. You have Bristlebacks, you have Lycanthropes. There's a lot of physical only damage carries like PA and Alk, spoilers. And Terrorblade, highest armor hero in the game. His shard feels really powerful. The standard build just looks like Manta, pretty early shard, and then a bunch of stat items, and then 1 or 2 damage items to boot. In the last bit. Very powerful in the right games, and I put him in B tier because he's getting picked a pretty solid amount. He's also a flex pick between carry and offlane, so there's a little bit of like, they don't know exactly what you're doing with the hero element to it. Maybe that doesn't apply in your guys' games, but that's why I have him in the bottom of B. So next up, we got Ursa, who, like, in theory, feels like he'd be really strong in this meta, based on what's good right now. There's just a lot of beefy boys that need to be taken down, but there's also just a lot of Radiance builders who he kind of struggles against because of the mischance, like being 30%. He's got a solid 50% win rate with like 2,000 games at the highest bracket. Most people are taking the bear down facet, and you're still going like the Treads Battle Fury, potentially Phase Battle Fury. I would stick to Ursa being bottom of B simply because you can't just pick Ursa, but in like a solid game, and if you're also an Ursa player, which most carry players are, it's definitely a game where you see 2 beefy boys Ursa go, but that's why I have him in the bottom of B tier. He's also got a decent sample size of games, rocking about 50%. Next up, we got Monkey King. Kind of the same idea as Ursa, but it's a lot more of a lane dominance thing rather than like the matchup in the late game. There's just a lot of melee offlaners like the Lycan that just get absolutely demolished by Monkey King. So keep in mind that his build is rather flexible, but it's a laning thing. Monkey King's pretty sick right now for that regard, and I'd definitely be checking him out if you're struggling with these snowballing Bristlebacks, Lycanthrope offlanes, because shutting down their momentum can be pretty crucial. Next up, we got Gyrocopter. This is a hero that's generally better the higher you go in MMR, but we're seeing a lot of summons heroes. I talked about squishy ranged heroes being a problem. It does feel like the carry's job right now is to kind of stand his ground and just tank. And Gyrocopter is one of the best heroes in the game for doing just that. But once again, he's kind of reliant on his lane going well and abusing the flak to shove out the wave, because he becomes one of the fastest farmers in the game if he's level 7 with 1 or 2 small damage items, A lot of people are going Falcon Blade, Crystallis into the Ags rather than like rushing the Ags straight up. And that also helps match the tempo of a lot of these currently popular carries. But I think he's best as a ranged hero when you have a melee 5 like Gyrocopter, Omni Knight, Clockwork, this type of stuff. He's a ranged, high damage, high tempo carry. So just keep in mind, I think that's what he's best for. And that's why I put him in B tier, just because it doesn't feel like there's too many ranged hero options right now. One of which we'll get to later, who's not the easiest mechanically morph. Next up, in the top of the B tier, a hero I love playing, I've been having good success with, and we've been seeing him more and more in pro games, is the Lifestealer. Another Radiance hero. I feel like he's kind of a budget alchemist, spoiler alert. But he's got the Radiance build up. His laning stage is a bit weaker, but the best item in the meta right now for carries is Sange and Yasha. I think the second best item is Manta. Like, every carry would like to buy one of these 2 items, and at least the majority of them. And Lifestealer can buy either, just depending on the game. I take the Rage Facet most of the time, but generally Phase, Orb of Corrosion, or Armlet, depending, but I like to go Radiance into Armlet, so it's usually Phase, maybe Orb of Corrosion based on your lane, Radiance into Armlet, because your Feast early game isn't really enough to sustain the Armlet. And then from there, it's just Manta or SNY. And then late game, it just depends on the carry-to-carry matchup. Do you need a Satanic? Do you need MKB for damage? Do you need AC? You know, just usually carry to carry matchup is the way to go there. Sometimes you even need a BKB on Lifestealer, Ag Scepter. These are all items. I think he's a great anti-carry in the current meta, and that seems pretty hard to come by from the carry role. Like in the past, it was kind of like Medusa Razor, like Medusa AoE, BKB piercing, stun, Razor with the link. But I feel like Lifestealer is the best anti-carry at the current moment. Also, Lifestealer is one of Bloodseeker's absolute worst matchups. Same with Spectre. So, I know you guys haven't seen my higher tiers yet, but process elimination, you know they're up there. So one thing I love about Lifestealer is that he's quite good against two of the best carries in the game right now. Moving on to A tier. These are heroes that I just feel like are overall really solid. They either have a lot of games. They don't all boast amazing win rates. Like PA is one of the most picked heroes in all of Dota. She's got about a 50% win rate, averaged across all brackets, but she's only rocking a 48% at my bracket. Even then, I feel like PA is such a menace. The major thing is she just has to have some sort of kill threat on you in lane. I feel like if PA is not at least getting some kills in lane, the hero just falls flat because of the tempo of the game. But if she's able to like somewhat shut down the enemy offlaner, suddenly that tempo slows down just enough where you get that Battle Fury. A lot of people are following up the Battle Fury with Sanj and Yasha rather than like Deso or BKB. And then from there, it kind of depends. They sometimes go BKB, Basher, Satanic, but the fact that people are predominantly going the methodical facet means that the Sanj and Yasha has even more value because of the fact that you have attack speed and your crits are based on how many times you attack. So overall, PA is a little bit different of a hero now. She still offers a lot of burst just innately, but it seems like a much more of a shutting down the offlaner thing, and her shard being especially useful against these tanky boys with passives, the Spectres, the Bristles, the DKs, you name it. Next up, we got DK. He's kind of just the solid cleave hero right now. You know, we think of these like AoE farmers like Medusa, Sven, etc. And I just feel like DK is the best one out of all of them with the built-in farming mechanics. Just a solid, reliable laning phase. Usually people are going Armlet, Mask of Madness, Sanj and Yasha into like BKB, Silver Edge, Daedalus type build. There's obviously situational items in there, but the Armlet, Mask of Madness, SNY seems pretty staple. And you can consider a blink if your team needs some initiation. But that hero's been pretty rock solid for a while now. I feel like if you just don't really know what to pick and you want a low polarity, you know, very consistent hero in your lane, low variance is the word I was looking for, then DK is the one to go. Now we got Lycan, a hero that's been popping up especially recently, also rocking around a 50% win rate. That Alpha Wolves facet is just absolutely nuts. I talked about Lycan much more in detail in my video from last week. So if you want to check that out and know more about Lycan and what he's doing, feel free to look. And we also got Bristleback. Just been in the meta for such a long time now. The common build is to go something like Treads or Phase, depending. Soul Ring into Ags. Sometimes people are just going Bracer plus Null Talisman rather than Soul Ring with the mana regen talent at level 10. But it's that Ags, Bloodstone, SNY. This like insane timing. Sometimes you need to buy a Dispel like BKB because they're buying like Spirit Vessels and stuff. But yeah, you just are this ridiculously fast-paced hero. The only downside of Bristle and pubs is he especially relies on having someone stack for him and hitting those key timings. But he's amazing against summons heroes. So just kind of keep that in mind. Any summons hero in the game sucks against Bristleback. So maybe you don't want to pick him in lower brackets, but if you're dealing with any Lycans, Beastmasters, Visages, Broodmothers, Enigmas, he owns absolutely all of them. So definitely the best time, I think, to pick Bristle. But it's also a good patch to learn him overall. Getting a relatively early shard is a nice go-to. Abusing him to get the Tormentor around his Ags timing. He's also like can solo it. So another useful mechanic of Bristle. And to wrap up the A tier, we got Slark. Slark still got the same build as always, which is Treads into either Diffusal, Mage Slayer, or Orchid. That is the most important decision you have. I've seen some pros actually going back for a Midas when they're having a bit tougher of a game. I'm not a fan of Midas Slark, if avoidable. I feel like Slark has always been about that second nighttime, around like 15 minutes, having this like 13 to 20 minute window, have him kind of like steamroll the map because of the full night vision that he has with that first or second item. I think he's one of the best heroes right now for punishing double melee. You always have the Slarks, Ursas, and Monkey Kings that punish double melee. I think Slark's by far the best at doing this right now. And he loves tanky boys as well because he feasts on them with his Essence Shift. But yeah, it all comes down to making the right choice between Diffusal Orchid and Mage Slayer, usually seeing the Ag Scepter later. He isn't buying S&Y, kind of surprising since Slark doesn't mind that item. But usually right now, the enemy team almost always has a single Orchid. So looking to buy a Dispel for Orchid is pretty important for Slark. You can consider Disperser or BKB. I think that's one of his major weaknesses, is that there's a lot of Orchids and Slark doesn't want to buy a Dispel because he has one in one of his abilities. Starting off the S tier is the new hero, Kez. He doesn't have a facet, so people are taking the same facet every single time. Spoiler alert, less decisions makes it even easier. Rocking quite a high 53% win rate. I've seen him played mid as well, sometimes even in the off lane, but I do feel like his best role is the carry. Overall, his worst matchup seems like heroes that limit his mobility. Bloodseeker, Drow, basically silences / mobility limitations, as I mentioned. But his build seems pretty straightforward. People are going for treads into Battle Fury. He's kind of like Jug, I feel like, because he's got sustain from his ultimate, and he just kind of cleaves people with double hits. Maybe that's not exactly like Jug, but he's going very similar items that I'm seeing. It's treads, Battle Fury, Sanjin Yasha, or Manta, depending on the game. Seeing a lot of defensive items like Lincoln's, Ag Scepter, BKB, not all of them, but one or two of those, with one damage item to boot at the end, like Daedalus or MKB, and just kind of seems like he really does seem like the modernized Jug. He has the gap close built in, rather than relying on the Omni Slash or the Ag Swift Slash. Just feels like Kez really is just a better version, and his laning stage feels pretty reliable since he has high base damage in the sword stance. But overall, definitely have to get used to him a bit if you're playing him. I haven't dabbled myself, but he's been in a pretty good amount of my games, and his win rate speaks to the fact that he's a good hero to play right now. And since he's got a pretty consistent build that people have settled on, that just tells me that there's not too many decisions for you to be making. You just need to learn the new hero mechanically. And now seems like a great time since the rest of the patch has kind of stabilized out. I've got Bloodseeker, absolutely insane win rate at like every bracket, 54% in the pro tier bracket. We are seeing the build that we talked about 2 videos ago, which is talking about 2 heroes in the meta, which, just quick refresher, he's good. Now, he does not go refresher. That is not part of his build. He is going for either Null Talisman or Soul Ring early for some mana regen. You're maxing out or putting 3 points in your W bare minimum, taking all the Spell Lamp talents, because then at level 15 your W one-shots creep waves, and we're seeing phase into usually Radiance pretty early, but if it's a more of a mid-game game, then you can go like Falcon Blade Ags, S&Y, and just running people down with usually what ends up being Radiance and an Ags, but sometimes no Radiance because of the tempo of the game. But yeah, he's going the Arterial Spray Facet as well, because it seems like it helps a lot with kill potential in the early game. And late game, it's just pure damage per hit when you rupture somebody, which is never bad. And we got Spectre, to no surprise. I talked about her a lot in my top 3 heroes in every role build video. I mentioned a lot of her Orchid / Manta build rush, but I am seeing about 70% that, about 30% Blade Mail Radiance. I feel like the Blade Mail Radiance is coming back a little bit compared to what I saw about a month ago. So it really comes down to, does your team play on the offensive or does your team play on the defensive? I really think it just boils down to that. If you're looking to kind of stall, you go for the Blade Mail Radiance. If you're looking to consistently pick off, you have a hero like Nyx, a hero like Bounty Hunter, you're playing low tempo, they have elusive heroes like Puck, then you go the Orchid and you just kill people. So that just boils down to your team composition, I think. Next, we got Morphling, 52% win rate in my bracket. Picked all the time in professional Dota. Yeah, I know he's a little bit tough of a hero, but people aren't really utilizing his ultimate all that much. We're seeing a lot of just like 4-1-2 stats for people's skill builds. Because stats give you double what they normally do for Morphling. That's his innate ability. And we're seeing just the treads into Vlad's, into Manta, usually Conda or BKB or Butterfly after that. So pretty standard build, I'd say, for Morphling. Like, nothing shocking there. I feel like Vlad's just makes his quality of life really nice. You're going Vlad's for lifesteal and mana regen, which gives you all the sustain. And then you're going stats, so it gives you tankiness. So it just feels like the hero's pretty... I don't want to say brain dead, but compared to what he normally could be or potentially could be in a given patch in terms of difficulty, Morphling's definitely on the low end right now. And in my humble opinion, the best carry in all of Dota. It doesn't necessarily reflect in the win rates of pubs. This is a bit biased towards more coordinated Dota. I've also gone 6-0 with Alk this month. I just keep winning, so it's Alk. So with the seed money facet, 850 gold to start the game, plus bounties. Feels like he's a hero that snowballs off a farm, and he's given an extra like 330 gold if you count seed money from the bounties and the 250 gold, right? So it's a snowballing hero with kill potential in lane that hits a ridiculous timing, loves Radiance, loves Sanj and Yasha, two of the best meta items right now, and eventually usually goes like Bloodthorn later on. We're even seeing a lot of Alks just skip Blink. We're seeing like Radiance SNY into BKB or Bloodthorn or both, because at the end of the day, he just runs you down. And it feels like there's very few heroes to deal with this. All the heroes like Ursa, Lifestealer, and stuff that are really good against him, he can just go Orchid and burst you. Like, he can just stun you with Orchid. If you don't push BKB or something during that, you're gonna freaking die. And he gets these items really fast, roach timing, farming fast, all that stuff. Really strong lane. Overall, he just does everything in the current patch. So if I'm recommending one hero to spam the shit out of to gain MMR, it'd probably be Alchemist if you're really good at him. Otherwise, it would be Bloodseeker because of the fact that he's so straightforward. He's pretty much Alchemist with built-in sustain in the laning phase that also just has a very consistent scaling build throughout the course of the game. That's going to wrap up this week's meta update. A carry hero tier list from yours truly. Like, comment, subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching. Good luck out there in your pubs. And Gaben, please give us a new patch. But not like right now, because we just made a video. See you guys next time.